Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it. A lot of times people ask me, why did you do this podcast? And a guest today is one of the main reasons why I have the opportunity to speak to people that are way out of my pay grade, which I think is a fair theme for all of the guests I've had so far. But Rabbi Shmuel Bloom, for those that are not familiar with him, has been a Jewish leader, one of the top Jewish leaders for over 50 years. He was the executive vice president of Agudas Yisrael, which is a movement, an organization that focuses on the needs of the Orthodox Jewish community and the Jewish community at large in America and across the world. And what it provided him with is the opportunity to be the bridge between the great Jewish sages and Torah luminaries and great Jewish activists and the rest of the world. So he had the opportunity to be in this amazing position of leadership, and at the same time, while being that bridge between, the very top of American government, also got to interact with and have a very close personal relationship with the greatest rabbis of, within the last 100 years, which is an unbelievable opportunity and gives a person a great perspective. What will come out in this interview are quite a few things. He has a very large reach. He has a very large family. We talk about how do you balance the needs of the family and your community work. But if I could take a specific lesson that he never said, but I heard over and over and over again as both the character traits of the great Jewish leaders that he has been close to, and certainly himself, is this idea of modesty. He takes credit for nothing. It's either the greatness of God or the greatness of the people in his life, and it's such an unbelievable thing that is very much in line with how Jews always have reacted to leadership, which is that leadership really means learning how to empower others. And the more that you can lower yourself and be mission focused, the greater you can become. So I invite you to sit back. This is really an amazing opportunity. Rabbi Bloom is now the Dean of Or Lagola, which is the leadership training program through Or Sameach in Jerusalem. And so he's continuing his service to the Jewish people in that manner, as well as quite a few other things, but really a great chance to hear the bridge of the last 100 years of Jewish awareness and Jewish growth in America and what he's looking at now and in the future. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's such an honor and a pleasure to have you here. And I wanted to just start by asking a little bit about your background, how you got into leadership and your life up until this point.
I actually had two of the major masters of Jewish community support working for. When I was a student at Ner Yisrael Rabbinical College in Baltimore, Yeshivas Ner Yisrael, Rabbi Newberger, who was the vice president or president of Ner Yisrael, asked me to serve under him. And he was a leader within the Jewish community. And after a few years that I was in St. Louis, I returned to New York and worked under Rabbi Moshe Shera, the outstanding leader, the special gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us after the Second World War and destruction of European Jewry, to one of the people to help rebuild Torah in the United States.
What was it like working with them, and what was their personalities? And perhaps you could speak about what they saw in you or how you cultivated that made them want to work and to build you up.
Both of them were servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They were Avdei Hashem. And they felt that their life was built on service to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, service to the Jewish community, to try to be Mekadosh Shem Shemayim, to try to glorify the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. And they were alpha personalities. They were people who were bright and active and committed and spent all hours of day and night working for their goal in life, which was to be Mekadosh Shem Shemayim, to have HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name glorified in this country.
The world that was then is so difficult for me to look at now, but essentially we're talking about people, the world there was right after the Holocaust had happened, and the Orthodox Jewry, at least in America, was vastly underrepresented in all areas. What was their sense? Were they positive? Were they driven sort of by a passion to rebuild? Was it kind of out of a desperation? Like, how did they look at life?
I think it was a passion to rebuild. I think that they felt that after the Holocaust and the destruction of so much Jewry, they had a mission. They were here with a mission to rebuild Torah on these shores, or to build Torah on these shores after the destruction in Europe. And they felt that there was a special partnership with the American-born Jews who knew of the United States, and certainly in Rabbi Sherer's case, who grew up in the United States, who knew the problems in the United States, but joined together with the spirit of the Holocaust survivors, who together combined to be a dynamic force to be able to rebuild.
How did you see them structure their focus on which problems to address, and how do they go about addressing those problems?
I think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu also arranged the problems to come on their plate. Yes, they looked at different problems and tried to say this is something that's important. They knew how to focus. They focused on the things that were important at the time, and where they felt that the work has to be done in order to rebuild. Again, there were very different circumstances. Rabbi Nuger was building a yeshiva, created the yeshiva. He took students, he took Holocaust survivors in as students. He took some of the teachers, some of his rabbeim. When he learned in Mir Yeshiva, he brought them to the United States and helped them develop a new concept. I think that they had an understanding of where American Jewry could go to. There were those who felt that, we'll move it up a little bit. But both of them, each in their own way, felt that we can reach higher heights. He says we can bring American Jewry up to the levels that we had seen that were destroyed in Europe, and maybe even greater.
Which is an unbelievable idea, because for such a long time, as far as I understand, in Europe, most people felt that America was awash and there was nothing that could be done. What do you think, I guess, about the individuals, or about the circumstances, or about America? What do you think inspired them to look differently at that situation?
I also have another attachment, and that was my father. My father was a 19-year-old boy in Hungary in the 1923, 24. And he wanted to come to America. And as you say, America was a treifa medina. It was the unkosher country. And how do you send a boy to the United States by himself and come to America? And his father refused to let him go. And they decided to go to Rabbi Shmuel Bloom, who was the Baal Mofes, the wonder, the Rebbe who was a miracle worker. And they would ask his advice. And they went to him. They traveled from their city to Karastir. And when they got there, my father explained why he wanted to go. His father explained why he didn't want to let him go. And Reb Shmuel Bloom said, "As the Bocher will gain, soll gain. Es wird sein gut. If the boy wants to go, let him go. It will be good." And we wrote on his matzeva that he came with the bracha of Reb Shmuel Bloom, and he passed away with close to 100 descendants, Shem Torah mitzvahs. So there were people who understood that it can be done. That even in this America, I think there's actually, I live with the Meshech Chochmah at the end of Bechukosai, who talks about the cycle of Jewish history. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu preserved the Jews through 2,000 years of Golus by moving them from situations to situation. He didn't let them, when you live in a country for too long, 3, 4, 5 generations, you become a part of the country and it causes assimilation. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu continuously changes through discrimination and anti-Semitism and pogroms and so on. You live for a period of time in which you can build up Torah and Yiddishkeit. And then if you start to stray, if 4 or 5 generations of you cannot find the place to grow within your country, HaKadosh Baruch Hu moves you to a different country. And there you find the people like Rabbi Newberg and Rabbi Scherer, my father, people who say that we have a mission. We have to rebuild Torah. And that cycle, 100 to 200 year cycle, is a cycle that the Meshech Chochmah talks about throughout the generations. And I think I lived through a good part of that cycle from the time of the destruction of European Jewry. I saw the rebuilding in the United States. I was in one group of boys, a new yeshiva was started. I was the first grade in the yeshiva Eastern Parkway, which later became yeshiva Zichron Maila. In other words, I moved up along this, and I saw the growth of Torah Yiddishkeit. My concern is that we don't fall down, that we have to see to it to keep on building.
Your position as being involved at this stage, I think, I've seen pictures in some of your family's walls, has put you in contact with some of the great Torah luminaries of the generation at a young age and throughout your career. What stuck out about that experience? What was, I guess, going through your mind as you were getting to know them, and the legacy of them that you carry with you? What are some of the points that you fondly remember, you think about, or that drive you forward?
I think if I could portray it in one concept, it's that they look at the world differently. There's a way of looking at the world where you see, I use the expression, with fleshy eyes, with needy eyes. You see the way the New York Times sees the situation. You see that this person did this and that person did that, and therefore it has an effect, and there's cause and effect, and things are going on, and there's finances and problems and all different types of things. But there's another way of looking at it and saying, looking at it from the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why is he doing this? The Chavetz Chaim, when there was an earthquake in Asia, would say HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing that because he wants to remind us of something. He wants to teach us. He wants to tell us something. So that's true about the earthquake in Asia, but it's also true about a storm in Far Rockaway and in Houston. And it's also true about things that are happening, how a presidential election works. It's true about how different things develop. So the Gedolei Yisrael that I met would look at a situation, everybody's looking at it one way, and all of a sudden they'd say, oh, we have a different perspective. There's a different look. I often talk about how if there was a Shushan Times, how they would report the story of Mordechai and Esther and what was going on and all the politics within the castle and all things. They would report an altogether different story than Mordechai and Esther reported because they were looking with the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I think that's what we call Das Torah, is they take as I find most of the Gedolei Yisrael that I dealt with, they look at things from a different perspective, from the perspective of what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu doing and what's his message. And the Torah that they learned, and from the Midrashim and from the Torah they learned, they try to see the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
How does a person going through their life try to develop that kind of viewpoint of their life, of world problems, versus kind of as you mentioned, kind of just going through the motions and bouncing from here to there?
The Rosh Yeshiva of the Yeshivas Nei Yisrael in Baltimore, Rav Ruderman, one of my rabbeim, the primary rabbi, would say that Das Torah is not limited to Gedolei Yisrael. It's a type of thinking that a person can develop by himself. It needs, and I think a personal decision certainly, it needs guidance from somebody who has learned it in Torah, somebody who knows the person well, but to be able to discuss with him, because a person has negias, right? He has his own. You look at something and say, well, that's probably what I wanted to do. The story of the woman who was going around passing by. She was on a diet and she was passing the bakery, and she says, if she finds a parking space, then she'll go into the bakery and take it. But if she doesn't find a parking space, then she'll pass it by. And the Rebbeinu Shalom helped, and she found the parking space. The 5th time she went around the block. So sometimes when the person has negias, you want to do something, it's important to discuss it with somebody else who doesn't have that negias, who can look at it, somebody who thinks it. But yes, I think a person can develop the thinking and the understanding that this world is guided by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if things are happening, then the question is if you can always interpret what the message is. Sometimes, as I say, that has to be discussed with somebody. But yes, you can determine if this is happening to me. If I am sick, there's a reason for it, right? There's a reason for it. It just didn't happen. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the one who made me sick. And why did he make me sick? And how can I get better? And what can I do to be better? That's the type of thinking that one has to develop.
Is Jewish leadership different, and how? And are Jewish leaders different, and how?
My experience is that most political leaders are interested in themselves. Their personalities that are interested in there are some who have an interest in the community and obviously are in it for that. But Torah leaders are people who themselves are usually modest. They are people who really don't, they know what they are. They don't think that they aren't knowledgeable. They don't think that they're not Torah learners. They don't think that they're leaders. But they think that their responsibility is that of an Eved Hashem, a slave. And a slave is a demeaning term, but a slave is the highest term in the words of the Rebbe Hashem calls Moshe Rabbeinu an Eved Hashem. Right? The highest level that he could reach is to be a slave. They don't feel that they're living lives for themselves, but they're living themselves for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as such, their decisions, their direction, the way they look at things are I found very different, very, very refreshing.
When a lot of these great Rebbeim were building themselves, they weren't thinking about how do I open what do I open, or how do I become a leader. So how do you cultivate that trait of being an Eved Hashem? And secondly, is it appropriate to want to lead or to try to set yourself up into a position of leadership?
HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given each individual in the world, from the creation from Adam Rishon until the time of Moshiach, a unique personality, a unique circumstances, a different circumstances that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has set one up with the understanding that he has a life's mission. He or she has a life's mission. And that mission that they have to undertake, sometimes and very often, you can see from the circumstances. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the opportunity to Rabbi Moshe Sheret to be the head of Agudas Yisrael and to work to represent the Jewish community to government, then he felt he had a responsibility to do it. Rav Aaron Leib Stein was in his late 80s, and all of a sudden he started traveling around the world, giving chizuk. What happened? What happened was that one day before Rosh Hashanah, an individual came to him and said, my father came to me in a dream. Rabbi Blooms was about 87 years old at the time. My father died 6 or 7 years before. He came to me in a dream and he said that he needs a schus. He needs some sort of merit. So I woke up, went on with my life. He came to me again in a dream. And 2 or 3 times it was a recurrent dream. And I don't know what to do. So he came to Rabbi Leib Steinman, and Rabbi Leib Steinman told him what to do. He left the room, and the Gabbai, his assistant, was standing by the door, and Rabbi Leib was alone in the room, and he heard him talking to himself. And he said, as if to say, why did this child come to me before Rosh Hashanah? And he said, Aaron Leib, talking to himself. Bald v'stever nashnor. Soon you're going to be a beggar. After 120 years, when you go into Shemayim, you won't be able to do any more mitzvahs. You're going to have to come and beg somebody for a schus to help with the merit. Chaparein. You're alive now. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you life. He says, use the life that he's given you to try to do things. I can't say a shir like I used to say when I was young, 30, 40, 50 years old. I'm 87 years old. But if I travel around the world and I give people a chizuk, he says, that can help. That's the way I can serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He also started a new yeshiva when he was 87 years old. Because he felt that if I have that opportunity, if God gave me life and God gave me the circumstances and he put me into a leadership position, then I have to use it.
in your own experience in over 50 years or more of leadership, you have dealt with quite a few very challenging problems. And the Jewish world as a whole has gone through so many heartbreaking situations and challenges. How does one continue to lead? How does one continue to show up and to have a sense of positivity while at the same time adequately and practically being aware of all of the negativity and the heartbreak and the problems that are around them?
It goes back to being an Eved Hashem. I'm not in this business because I have to make $1 million, or I have to do something, I have to change the Jewish world, or I have to create something. I'm God's servant. If he's making trouble, then there's a reason he's making trouble, and I have to try to fix it. If he can fix it, fine. If he can't fix it, not. And overall, you talk about negativity. I think in my lifetime, I was zeicher for that part of the cycle from the time that we were pretty much down. I was born at the beginning of the First World War. And to have seen the development in the United States and in Eretz Yisrael of Torah, the development, I don't see the negativity. I see very, very bright growth over the years. There was little bumps along the way, but on the overall, what the community has done, what the Torah, the growth of Torah, there are more Jews in one yeshiva in Lakewood than there were in all of Europe. There are more Jews in Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim than there were in all of Europe. So the builders, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us the opportunity and the schus to be able to rebuild Torah and Yiddishkeit to go on a peak. Again, as I say, there might be mountains of negativity. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're the dean of Or Lagola, which is where I went to yeshiva, the leadership training program out of Jerusalem, and you're still very active, involved in community issues. What do you feel like are the major opportunities, challenges, focuses that the modern day Jewish person, Jewish leader, Jewish parent should be looking at, should be thinking about, and how do we go about solving them?
In my youth, we were low ebb. During my lifetime, I've seen beautiful and dynamic growth. The question is, how do we keep it? How do we maintain the peak that we're on, and where do we take it from here? The Meshech Chochmah says something very interesting. He said that children want to accomplish more than their parents. If it's just a matter of, I'm going to do the same thing my father, I can't have it. My father learned this much Gemara, I'm going to learn a little bit more, how can I learn as much? How can I say as much Tillim as my mother says? So if they cannot find the opportunity for growth and dynamism in the Torah community, they'll look without. And that's what he says is talking about the cycle. Question is, now that we have reached a point that, Baruch Hashem, we're on a high, have we come almost to the peak? Have we reached the peak? Have we gone over the peak? Where are we and how do we maintain it? How do we break the cycle? That's what I think of. I think a lot of the children at risk and the problems, it was like HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the problems with the internet and the open. Well, these are serious problems that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a problem, he gave it. He wanted us to defeat the challenge. He wanted us to accomplish. He didn't want us to give in, right? And so we have problems, but the main problem is, how do we get our youth excited about doing things that their parents didn't do? One of the things that I suggested at the Aguda convention was the area of Akira. So I'm working. One of the things that I'm doing now is in Ner Sameach, and Yeshivas, and there I see individual. For a number of years, I managed the mentor mission program of Ner Sameach. Twice a year, they have Balabatim, lawyers, doctors, professionals come and spend 4 or 5 days with university students, with college students, and the college students gets the opportunity to see that not only rabbis in the Orthodox Jewish community know Torah or learn, but that somebody they would like to become a successful lawyer, successful businessman. And so this is what they want to become, and he can spend a few hours a day in learning, and he can keep Shabbos, and he can do all these things. It's a tremendous opportunity, but I think it's not large enough. I think there are millions of Jews out there who have not been exposed to Torah, who don't understand that the most beautiful in life, the most beautiful thing in life is to be a servant of Hashem, is to be able to keep the mitzvahs and keep the Torah, and maybe we're not doing that. That's something that our parents didn't do. Maybe that's something we can get our children to do, to get excited about, and to be able to work on.
You have been so busy and you're running from this place to the other place. In terms of a person that has a position of leadership and is trying to take on these roles of responsibility, how does one, what advice could you give about proper shalom bias, or the attention, the commitment, the developing the relationship between spouses? And I think it's becoming a greater issue with technology and, all of the different things that we're bouncing from this thing to the other thing. How do you really build a strong family life in terms of the marriage itself while you're being pulled in so many directions?
I think you have to ask my wife that one. I think my wife is a master at understanding that dynamic. But basically, they have to realize that they're a team, that it's not two separate things. There's a team. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created man in one body, Adam and Chava together, and then he split them apart, because he wanted them to know that although they have to be in two different places, one has to take care of the children, one has to go out to work, and one has to learn Torah, because each have to do something. They couldn't do it in one body, but really it's all parts of one body. And the one group, which is a team, to Rabbi Blooms, who's a mechutner of mine, Rabbi Blooms from Medicine, New Jersey. It's an idea that I say often, that if you take water and salt and you mix them together, you get salt water. That's called a mixture. If you take hydrogen and oxygen and you mix it together, that becomes oxygen. That's a compound. That's something altogether different. Marriage is not a mixture. It's not taking two separate people and working together. It's creating a new factor, creating a new being, and that being is the two together. And as long as they realize that they're working together on the same goals, I think that the shalom bias comes along with it.
You have how many children?
9 or 11.
11 children. And how many grandchildren?
Over 70.
Over 70.
And 24, 32 great-grandchildren. Can I know?
Okay. And now we're talking about, thank God, a large empire, and you were saying inspiring the youth and everything like that. Your children aren't just inspired. They are all leaders and, Jewish activists all in their own right. How did you inspire that kind of greatness out of your children?
Mostly siyata d'shmaya, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps. The Baron Kotler gave a haftocha, a promise, to people who go out in the community in order to teach Torah, to say that their children won't suffer from it. And I think that's the primary. In addition to that, I recognize, if you know my children, you know that if you have 11 children, they're no two the same. Everybody's different, and everybody's doing different things. But everybody's committed to that one idea, that my job in life is to keep the Shem Shemayim. So one's sitting and learning, and one's an executive, and one's doing kiruv, and each one is doing something else. But they're all united. I think all of them feel that my goal in life, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me talents, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me abilities. My question is how I can bring a gift with my life to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. At the end of 120 years, I should be able to say, Rabbi Shalom, this is the portion that you gave me. These are the talents and abilities you gave me. Look what I was able to do.
Rabbi, I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.